Okay, so let's apply this texture back onto the 3D model. You can see I've worked on this some more. I'm not totally satisfied with it, but it's getting the right look. Um, so one thing to keep in mind is if you have a piece upside down like I do, you make sure you put all the graphics on it upside down too, right? Because it's going to be, the coordinates are going to be applied on the right way. And I used you can also this is just a square of the background I copied and pasted and put a little bevel layer style on it. Yeah, I'm just going to see how that looks. This is actual photo of event I put on there, right side up and upside down. Um, see how that looks. So all this stuff, um, we build it here, but then you generally have to apply it to the geometry in 3ds Max, see how it looks, and then maybe go back and make changes if some stuff doesn't look too cool. So we want to hand in two things here, right? One is this as a JPEG, right? Your finished one. We already handed it in last week, I believe, but if there's been any further work on it, we want to hand that in. So as a JPEG with the template turned on, so file, save as, choose JPEG, okay, hand that in. All right, now to put it into 3ds Max, we want to turn the template off. So I have the template on the top and I have named that layer just because it's you end up with a lot of layers on this thing. It's quite a lot of layers. I almost got to the point where I was going to start putting them in groups, but because if you want to find something, it gets kind of tedious. But I didn't get quite that far. So anyway, to use it in 3ds Max, you want to make sure you turn that off because we don't want to see those black lines. And you could save this as a JPEG or anything like that. Sometimes I do that to use in 3ds Max, but 3ds Max can use a layered Photoshop document, believe it or not. Okay. So I'm going to just save this. Okay. As a PSD, and then I'm going to go to 3ds Max, back to this file. Now we could leave the unwrap UVW on there, and we could also just collapse all to, which would sort of like bake the UV coordinates into the geometry. Just normally I would do that because I don't want this to be something that's in play and could be accidentally modified. I would normally do that, but for the sake of this project, since maybe there could be, well, actually, if you make a mistake on the UVs, generally you have to kind of start over with a Photoshop document, or at least put a new template on there and rearrange things. I'm going to leave it there for the moment. So anyway, I'm going to go to the material editor. Okay, rendering, material editor, compact material editor. Okay. And let's see what renderer we have set up. So I'm going to go rendering, render setup, and up here I have this as Arnold. I was using Arnold. Let's go back to the scanline renderer, and this should not be active shade. This should be production. Okay, production rendering mode and scanline. Now the scanline is kind of like the old school simplest renderer, and you can make perfectly nice looking renderings with it. Certain capabilities. 3ds Max always get some high-end renderer that's like incorporated into the software, usually made by some other company. And for like 20 years or 15 years, quite a long time, they used Mental Ray, which I use mostly. But I always use Scanline for the class just because it's simpler and it makes good enough images for us. And recently they switched to Arnold, which I've been kind of using. It's quite slow, but it makes beautiful images. If you want to mess around with it, you can, but I'm going to continue to show stuff with the Scanline renderer just because we can get good results and it's a lot easier. Okay, so Scanline renderer. This physical material that I had on here, you may or may not have that, but that doesn't work with with the scanline renderer. So to get a regular material, I'm going to click on here where it says physical material. And let's see, there's scanline and standard. It says legacy because it's, you know, kind of older, but it's still fine. So I'm going to call this, you know, arch material, okay? Because it's the material for the arch, right? You don't really need to do that because I believe we only have one material on here. So anyway, so we go to our maps, okay? And this thing is just the regular, it's the colors, right? It's not all these maps do things like, you know, glossiness, how places where it's opaque or transparent, reflection. But this is the diffuse color, okay? There's a shortcut to it right here. If you just click on that, it takes you to this, all right? But I'm just going to go here and maps, and it's a bitmap, right? And then we just have to, where am I here? Class stuff, arches. So there's my text, right? And open. Okay, so I think like sometimes I feel like a JPEG would be a little faster. At least it would have been there because it had to deal with all those layers. Collapsed layers, yes. Individual layer, no. So the default is good. All right, so there's the material. Let's apply it to our geometry. You can either drag it on there, or since I already have it selected, I'm going to use apply material to selection. I should do this because most of the time when I'm working, I have a ton of objects in the scene, and dragging something onto the scene is not very reliable. You hit the wrong thing. So I usually select the thing and hit this. Okay, in this situation, you just have one object, you can do either one. Okay. And there it is, all right? I'm going to hit F4 so I don't see the line edges. That doesn't look too bad. And if you don't see, if you just see a gray material, that's the show shaded material in viewport, okay? For whatever reason, mine's, it'll only go away, I believe, if you turn on some other shaded material, okay? The default way this works is we'll only show one map, okay, at a time. Like if I switch to, you know, a glossiness map or whatever, it won't show the diffuse map. It'll just show one. To see the real way the material looks, you need to have make a rendering. All right. So, but anyway, this doesn't look too bad. Okay. Now you can see that I see I got like I googled torn posters or something like that, and I sometimes you'll find like some urban area where people just put up posters on top of posters, you know, announcing concerts and stuff like that. And I put some of those on there and then just erased most of it. It looks kind of cool because you can see some print and not perfect, but needs a little more work, but I kind of like it. And I have this warning thing around the top edges, right? That's here. Okay. All right, not bad. I need more, maybe a little bit more on the outsides here because they don't look, doesn't look too bad. But so one thing, if you don't see how I see pretty good detail here, and if you look at yours and it looks very low resolution when you're in 3ds Max, it could be, let's see, you might need to switch this from standard to high quality. Okay, that's one thing that may help. Okay, because there's some things with my machine that I've made changes, and occasionally I forget that you guys haven't made the changes, but it's the kind of thing that once you do it, it stays turned on. You kind of forget about it. The other thing is if I go to views, viewport configuration, this very first thing, display performance, texture maps, right? Textures is checked, should be texture maps. and viewport back. The big procedural maps doesn't apply, but these two, I changed them to 2048, okay? So you want to do that, and then once you have that done, then mine looked pretty good already in standard quality, but you might have to change it to high quality right here. Okay, so anyway, it actually doesn't matter if it looks low resolution in the screen, really, but uh, it's sometimes it's nice when the screen looks good. Okay, so let's make a rendering of this so we can hand that in too. So we'll hand in, we'll do a more refined rendering of this later with lights and the photographic background and stuff like that. But we'll hand this in just to see how it looks. I'm going to make a copy of this, okay? And I'm going to make sure angle snap is turned on. I'm going to rotate 180 degrees so we can see the back of it. If you watch down the bottom of your screen, move my picture here. Okay, so right next to the gizmo, you can see that it goes in 5-degree increments, and it's also down at the bottom of your screen. So I want it to be 180. Yeah. And just so we can see both sides of the thing, kind of. All right, that'll work. So let's let's render this out. Now, if you look in the rendering setup, it's set to 640 by 40. That's really low resolution. We want to see if we can do a little bit more out of that. These presets here, they're all really low res, okay? And they're actually all the same aspect ratio, meaning the same height to width. We want to see where, like 800 by 600 is kind of squarish. And you notice that have a pretty widescreen monitor here, and that doesn't look very squarish because it doesn't actually show us the rendering area. All right, so in your render window, normally it would be camera, but we're just doing perspective at the moment. You want to make sure you turn on, so I'm clicking on perspective, show safe frames, okay? And here's the actual rendering area, and you can see it turns out I'm kind of zoomed out, it wasn't showing the right thing exactly. So I'm just going to zoom in on that, position it better here. Okay, so let's, you can of course adjust your position so we can see as much of them as possible. Okay, but I'm going to let them overlap because I want to be close. If I move them way apart, then all right. So so I'm going to make this higher resolution because even 800 by 600 is kind of low. We want to be able to see this pretty well. All right, so like I said, see if I click on these, the aspect ratio doesn't change because they're all the same. So what I'm going to do is crank this up somewhat. And if I just lock the aspect ratio right there, then if I type in a new number, the other one will automatically change to stay the same aspect ratio, the ratio between the width and the height. So let's see, maybe I'll make it 1800. Okay, and that becomes 1350. And let me go to files, and I'm going to, find a place to put it. Class AR250 arches, JPEG, right? And I'm going to call it arch test number, and I'm putting the year in just because I might do this next year again or whatever. Okay, save. Okay, now bear in mind that it doesn't actually render at this point, right? I have to say render. Okay, you can also just render it out, and in the render frame window there's a little a disk icon. You can save it there. All right, should I have put this on white? No, I think it's okay on black. So this looks good. So let's hand this in. All right, it's a JPEG, and I think that size is good. What I say, 1800 by 1350. It gives us a, we can see it good enough to judge how this looks. So hand in that, hand in the texture, right? The diffuse texture from Photoshop with the template turned on. Here the template's turned off. and I think we'll be good. And then we'll do another project with unwrapping, and those two objects, we'll put them together in a scene because they kind of go together, and we'll make a nice photographic background. And there's, I'll show you the way that we can cast shadows in the photographic background. It'll look pretty cool. So, all right, I think we're set with that.